Welcome to this video lesson on the Motorola digital radios used by the Brisbane State Emergency Service. To begin with, I'll go through the similarities with the analogue radios used by the Queensland State Emergency Service, and then go through the simple features and the complicated features for the handheld and mobile radios. Finally, I'll make some suggestions on some familiarisation activities so you can get used to using these radios. Now here we have the two handheld radios in common use in the Brisbane SES. On the left hand side we have the ICOM IC-F60, which is the analogue UHF radio, and on the right hand side we have the Motorola MTP-850 TETRA digital handheld. Now both of these radios have volume controls on the top of the radio, so if you can't hear the signal very well, turn the volume up. The push to talk on both is on the left hand side as well, and the channel changes are done through buttons. On the ICOM is up and down buttons to select channels, and on the Motorola is left and right select the talk groups, which is the equivalent of a channel in the digital radio. Now there's a lot more buttons on the Motorola handheld, and a lot of these are used for making calls, and there's also a fancy screen to give you a lot more information. So I'll go through these features in order, starting at the top. To begin with, we have the volume control. This is a twist knob that will set the volume by default, but you can actually click it up and down as well, and that will let you select talk groups. I don't recommend doing this because it's easy to get confused, so just use it as a volume knob. The speaker on the radio is at the top here. Now it has two modes. It can be very loud when you use it like a conventional radio, or it can be quieter when you hold the radio like a cell phone. On the left hand we have a side here, we have three buttons. The top one updates the GPS position on the network. So this is if you're in a particular location and you need to get a fix back to headquarters, you can hold that green button down. Here we have the push to talk. Operates just the same as the analog radio, but like using a repeater, you need to hold it down for at least a second before you start talking. It will give you a confirmation beep as well. If the talk groups get all confused and you end up talking to the trees department instead of SES, hold this button down here, and this will take you back to the default talk group, which is SES North. From there you can then choose the correct group. Now the screen's like a cell phone. We have soft buttons here, so these labels determine what the buttons here will do. You also have a menu key and a rocker panel. If you want to change your options, hit menu and go through the different things, and I'll show you some of this in a video shortly. The dial pad here lets you call particular radios or make telephone calls, and then you make a call with the green button or you hang up with the red hang up button. So this is the power symbol, and this is how you turn the radio on. Now there are two microphones on the radio. The one you will normally use is up the top here. This is when you're using it like a radio, but there's also a microphone down here for when you're using it like a telephone. Now the final feature of this radio is the duress alarm. This is an orange button on the top of the radio. There may also be an orange button on the speaker microphone. When this is held down, it doesn't matter if the radio is turned on or off, it'll work. This will put the radio into a duress mode, the screen will go red, and you'll be connected to the council security centre. For the first 30 seconds or so, the microphone will go live, so you don't have to hold a button. So you should state the nature of your emergency, or if it's a false alarm, you should state who you are, where you are, and that it is a false alarm. Don't just hang up. It is also a good idea to report this to your group leader or deputy group leader operations to advise them that this has happened. There may be reporting required. Now the mobile radio, this is the MTM-800, is used as the base station radio and the transportable radio. It operates a little bit differently, and the screen's not quite so fancy. So the volume knob is the power button, so you have to press it in and turn it on. Most vehicles are set up that as soon as the key is turned on in the vehicle, the radio will turn on, and when the key is turned off, the radio will turn off. However, you don't need to have the ignition on to use the radio. You can manually turn it on. The microphone is mounted in here. You have the standard screen, and these are the soft buttons here, 1 and 2. Just like the dial pad on the other radio, you have some buttons to select things. The single button used for making and ending calls, the full number pad for dialing specific numbers, and here this is the red duress alarm. It works like the red button on the handheld. Now take note that it is just underneath the mode button, which we'll use on a regular basis, so make sure your finger is on the correct button before you use it. Now this network requires base stations similar to that of a cell phone network, but with a bit better coverage. So the handheld map is on the left, and the mobile map, where you have a larger antenna such as on a car or base station, is on the right. Now it doesn't cover exactly the same area the UHF radios do, so you need to be careful. It's always a good idea to take a UHF radio with you as well. Now these maps are subject to change, and it depends what Motorola do. Now going through the simple features of the radio, which is the group call, where one radio can be heard by multiple radios. And this is where the talk groups come in. So each talk group is like a channel on the analog radios. There's also private calls, which are radio to radio. So more like a telephone call, but you've got two options. The half duplex you use like a radio, where you need the push to talk button for somebody to hear. And you have full duplex, where you use the radio like it is a telephone. And finally, there's the telephone call, where you're talking to a mobile or a landline telephone. Now, each radio in the digital system has a unique identifier, similar to a telephone number. Now here, I have them listed as digital numbers. Normally we use a 4-digit number, but in the Brisbane SES radios, they also have a 6-digit format, which is the 4-digit number prefixed by 13. And you'll see that later on when I show you how to look up the digital ID number. But for making calls or sending text messages, you only need the 4-digit number. Now most radios, with the exception of the permanently mounted radios in group headquarters, will have a landline number attached, and they can be used this number can be used to call that radio directly from a mobile phone or a landline. You'll find that these numbers have some mappings. Now obviously the details aren't going to be made public, so look up the phone numbers for your own group's radios. Now the group call on the digital radio is the most common type of call you'll use. And this is where pushing the push to talk button on one radio will allow your voice to be heard on any other radio that's listening to the same talk group. Now it doesn't matter whether you are on the same repeater or not, they're all linked together. So somebody could be in Southport talking to somebody on Bribie Island, and it's fine as long as you're on the same talk group. So go through a demonstration of this. So basically wake the radio up, and then using the rocker keys lets you choose the talk group. And the talk group itself isn't selected until you press the select, which is this soft key here, and you'll see that that becomes options. So I'll go through that again. So now select becomes options, and you've locked in that talk group. Until you lock it in, you're not actually on the talk group, and that's a common trap. Now when the radio transmits, it sends out its ID. So here you can see that radio 9155 is the one that's transmitting on the talk group. So no more anonymous button pressing. People will know who you are. So there was 9052 was transmitting on the talk group. Now on the mobile radios, you use this mode button to change through until you find the right talk group. Then it's the left and right buttons, and this one locks it in. You'll see the OK, so you press that to lock it in, and that's locked in there. When you're on the network, you'll have the bars here, and that was the caller ID, so 9159 was the person talking. If you try and talk when somebody else is already talking, it won't let you, and it will actually say transmit prohibited. Well, no, not allowed to transmit. There you go. So that avoids the common situation of where two people are trying to talk on top of each other. So it's one big benefit of the digital system. It polices it much better. Now the other type of call you can make in radio mode is what's called a private call, which is one-to-one. Now this is good if you don't want to disturb a lot of people or if it's confidential information that you want to pass. But bear in mind that other people can still hear what's happening at the other end. So think before you say something you shouldn't. So in this case you dial the ID number of the radio you want to talk to and then press the push to talk button on the side. Then it starts ringing. This is what's called a half duplex call. So you still have to hold down the push to talk button to talk to somebody, but only they can hear you. And then you press the red button to hang up. Now if you're using handhelds, you can do what's called a full duplex private call, which is just like a phone call. But instead of pressing push to talk, you press the green button to make the call, and you press the green button on the other phone or radio to answer. In this case you use the radio up by your ear and then you can talk normally. The ring pattern will be more like a phone. On the mobile, change the mode until it says private mode, dial the number you want and then click the press to talk button on the speaker on the microphone. Don't use the green button on the front here because that's been locked out on these radios. Then hit the red one to hang up. So you need to use the mode button to choose private mode first. The TETRA digital radios are capable of making and receiving telephone calls from the normal mobile or landline network. Now this does require that you have coverage from the digital radio network, but that can be quite different from your standard mobile network, especially around Moggle or Upper Brookfield. So I'll demonstrate here two modes. First is receiving a call and then making a call. So I'm dialing the radio from my mobile phone. The ringing pattern is like a telephone. Hit the green button to answer, and then it's full duplex so you can talk and receive at the same time. You can go into speaker mode if you need to, and it's hanging up, and then call ended. Simple enough. Now to make a telephone call, dial the number that you're interested in, but you need to hit this soft key under C type, which is here, to change it from private number to phone number. Once you have done that, then you can hit the green button and that places the call. You'll hear my mobile ring. And answer the phone and talk like normally. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as using the radio in the full duplex private call mode. Now I just want to reiterate the duress alarm here. It's either the hazard light symbol on the mobile radio or the orange button on the top of the handheld. It's not to be played with, and it will work if the phone is turned off, so don't have a play with it thinking you can press a button without any consequences. Now I'd like to go through some of the more complicated features that the digital radios have, and these are sending text messages between radios, direct mode operation, which is where you don't have repeater coverage and you can use them in a talk around mode, how you can find your own radio ID and phone number, use the built-in GPS to get a position report, talking to other council groups that are not in the SES, and finally the tracking software where you can use a website to see where the radios are. Now the text messaging on these radios is only between radios. You cannot send a text to a cell phone. Now, unlike a mobile phone, one benefit is it confirms that the text gets through. So hit menu, go to messages, select, then new messages, and you type it in. It's like the mobile phone, it's you can have predicted text or normal text. Then you hit send, choose private, dial in the number of the radio you want it to go to. Unfortunately, the group calls don't work with these radios the way they're configured. Then you select send, the other radio will respond, and then you get confirmation that the message was delivered. On the receiving radio, just hit read and you get the message. Now if you send a text message to a radio that's not currently turned on, so choose a different ID. The menus are set to make it easier to send a message to multiple numbers. So you hit send, and you wait, and you wait, and it tells you it failed, so you know it didn't go through. So this is one big benefit over and above normal. Now on the mobile, you go through menu, send message, you type it out using multi-tap. It's a little bit more painful on the mobile radios, but you can get there. If you're trying to repeat a letter, you just have to wait for it to time out. Then you hit options, OK, send, dial in the number you want, send, and you get confirmation that it was delivered. Mode will take you back to the normal settings. Now if you're going to receive a message, you'll get a little blinking message come up on the screen with who it is, and then you can use the right hand soft button to read it. And that will also tell you the time and the date that it was received. You'll also get a little message indicator on the screen. So you can go menu, messages, go to the inbox, messages, and then if you need to, you can read that message and that will clear it off the screen. And then you can also erase it once you're done with it. And it's a good idea to clear the messages out of these radios once you're finished. Now direct mode operation is where the radios talk directly to each other. Because of the frequency bands and 800 megahertz, the range is quite limited. It's between 500 and 1000 meters. So it's best to use the talk groups where you can, but if you go somewhere which is outside those coverage maps, you can still use them as a last resort. Now the local asset services and the council has one direct mode group that all the radios in that part of council, which is where the SES falls, can talk. So you don't use it unnecessarily because you may impact other groups. But if you're out at Lake Mugra or somewhere like that, it's a good idea to use it. Now the radios can be in the trunked mode, which is where they use the talk groups, or direct mode, and you have to change the settings. So we'll go through this now. You go options, and just go choose direct mode and select. That's it, it's done. You'll see that the logo changed as well. Now on the mobile you have to go down to menu 6, which you could just hit the number 6 if you want, change the operation mode to direct mode and hit OK. I've also found that holding down the F3 function button over here can toggle that mode directly. Once you're in direct mode, you can't receive the telephone calls, you can't receive text messages, and people can't make private calls. Now the direct mode is also indicated by this icon up here. Now once you're finished with direct mode, you need to go back to trunk mode. So on the handheld radio, it's pretty much the same. Go into options, scroll down to when you get to trunked mode, and hit select. It'll make a few funny beeps, and the icon will change. Now a similar thing to what you did before with the mobile, go into networks, operating mode, choose the trunk mode, hit OK, and it'll beep. Or hold down F3 again. And you'll see that you've got the SES West back again. And the signal strength indicator lights up. There are times when you need to find out the full digital ID of the radio as well as the associated telephone number. So here I'll show you how you find that on the mobile and the handheld radio. So starting with the handheld radio, you go into menu, scroll down until you get more, select that, then choose My Info. Your private number is the full 6-digit number, and then the phone number, I've just blanked here, is the Telstra number. Now on the mobile radio, you scroll down until 5, own number, private number again, we only use the last 4 digits, and then the phone number is there for receiving telephone calls from the public. It's that number that will also appear on the caller ID if anybody has got a mobile or home phone with caller ID features. So be careful of that when you're making calls to homeowners. The handheld radios all have GPS receivers built into them. You'll notice the word GPS on the antenna, and a lot of the mobile radios do too. So it's possible to find out your location by diving into the menus and reading what the radio thinks. Now before you do, it's important to look here where there's a little satellite symbol. I'll show you again. This shows that you have a GPS lock, and the bars here show your signal strength. So it's the little satellite is the one that's important. So to find your location, press the menu button, scroll all the way down until you get to more, select that, then you want to scroll down further on this until you get to location, then you select position, and there you have it. You have your longitude and latitude in the WGS datum, and it's a degrees and decimal minutes format. This can't be changed, so whoever you are sending the details to, it needs to be able to accommodate that. It's not as flexible as a real GPS, but it may get you out of trouble. Sometimes it's necessary for the SES to work with other council teams, especially after large storm jobs. These radios are set up so that we can use talk groups from other groups within local asset services. And by default, the left and right rockers, when you use them, will only go between the SES talk groups. We have a facility which I'll show you where you go through a folder and find the teams that you want to talk to. So you go to the select talk group by folder, ERG, say Triops, choose the talk group you want, select it, and now we are on Tree Operations West. Now the left and right rockers will go through the different options for the trees in this particular case. If you want to go back to SES in a hurry, hold down the lower key on the right hand side and that will reset the talk groups back to the SES groups. There's a range of them there. I'd only recommend using these if you have a specific need. Now Track Xeon is website software that the operations group and local controller have access to, and in that they can track where each radio is and can send messages to those radios. So it's a good idea to use this in large operations because you can see exactly where everybody is. Now here's some ideas for some trunked mode operation, so the normal mode activities. I recommend that you use a mixture of handhelds and mobile radios so people get familiar with using both. Go around and do radio checks. Get used to how the radio sounds, holding down the button, the push to talk button for at least a second before talking. So get used to that normal operation. Then have everybody call each other with private calls so that it's one-to-one communication. Repeat that with text messages, and then make a few telephone calls just so people get used to the idea of it is a real telephone. Now, going into direct mode is well worth practicing, but once you're in direct mode you can only do the group calls. So get used to those. You still have to wait a second before you start talking after you press the push to talk button, and then once you're in the finish that direct mode activity, go back to trunk mode so the radios are serviceable. So now to wrap up, in many ways the digital radios are quite similar in the way they operate to the existing UHF analog radios. The key differences that we have are cool digital features such as text messaging and the ability to call radios directly without having everybody else listen in. So this could be done for privacy or just to reduce the amount of radio chatter that people have. Now the nice thing with the digitals in Brisbane is that we have many talk groups to use. So while each group has its own, there are also the 3 incident talk groups, and this means that we can have multiple groups running at once in any operation, as opposed to everybody trying to share channel 1 at Mount Cootha, which can get a little bit busy. Now trunked mode is the normal mode of operation. It's very rare that you'll need direct mode, but if the system should fail, because like a cell phone network, it has a central controller. If that equipment fails, then do go into direct mode to try and get some operations there. It may just work for you.